So, Nick, I put a poll up on the community post on YouTube basically asking because it seems like Belal Muhammad is the likely next opponent for Leon Edwards to contend for that welterweight championship. And I just wanted to see if that fight's made, what do our subscribers think the result would be? And to my surprise, actually, 61% thought that Leon would beat Belal Muhammad in a rematch. Obviously, the first fight ended in that eye poke no contest. So I figured we could chat about it, speculate a little bit about the fight, and get your thoughts on your early prediction as to who you think might win that fight.
Yeah, well, we're all guilty as fight fans where as soon as the fighter wins his belt or defends his belt, we need to know what they're doing next. And while it looked like Shavkat Rakhmonov would probably steal, all of Belal's thunder and jump right into a spot, we then find out that he's got that ankle injury and he's probably going to need to take care of that. So that does put Belal right back in the mix for being the number one contender. And look, Belal has done all the heavy lifting you need to do to get a title for a UFC belt. And I think Leon Edwards and Belal makes sense because we did have that fight that sort of got robbed from us. It was an eye poke. It really sucked for Belal because that thing looked like it was going to be like a career defier.
That was bad.
Yeah, he was able to bounce back from it, go back on his winning ways. And I think this is a good fight. And I would be really interested to see how Belal takes the last couple fights that Leon's had, the Kamaru Usman victories and now the Colby Covington victories, and learns from them. Because Belal has a very similar style in a lot of ways to Usman and Colby, which is pretty good striking, but nothing that's going to knock your hair back. Certainly nothing like Leon Edwards. And pressure fighting that's going to lead to grappling, which then takes the fight to the ground, and then they eat up minutes off the clock, eventually start taking rounds, and then you have to fight from behind. And Belal is very good at it, and I think he has maybe even a little bit more power in his striking than Kamaru Usman and Colby, certainly more than Colby. So I'd like to see how he's going to be able to take what these two guys did incorrectly and make some adjustments for his own game. Because if he doesn't do that, I see Leon Edwards continuing to outstrike and outclass all these guys on the feet and making it very difficult for them to get the fight to the ground.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Leon said, I've trained the past 3 or 4 years for this style, a style of a come-forward wrestler with decent hands who's a very pressure-forward type fighter, right? Because I knew what I was going to encounter when I got to the top of 170, and I wanted to be prepared for it. And clearly, over the last 3 fights, he's shown us that he is, in fact, prepared for it. Now, we only got to see a glimpse, just a few minutes, of how Leon versus Belal would look before the eye poke happened, and I would say, honestly, that Leon Edwards was winning pretty much most, or if not all, of the exchanges in that first fight.
I agree.
However, Belal Muhammad is not the same fighter that he was when he fought Leon the first time.
Right.
Well, the big complaint you remember with Belal was that he's a boring fighter, that he doesn't finish fights, and while he is very technically proficient, I understand how, the general public that watches MMA on a casual basis could find Belal Muhammad's style to be boring. But to me, he answered all of the questions and showed the improvements that he needed to show when he finished Sean Brady.
Right.
And we just saw Sean Brady come back and look absolutely stellar against Kelvin Gastelum. So that shows you where Belal's level is. Now, you also have to consider the fact that Leon Edwards of today is not the Leon Edwards that fought Belal either. So both of the men have made substantial market improvements in their game. It's going to be interesting to see which one of them made the better improvements and better adjustments. And I think you're right with Shavkat Rakhmonov. It was an emphatic finish with Wonder Boy, and I know Belal has done 9 fights in a row that he's won, and he's deserving, but the UFC, we know how they kind of operate sometimes. When you have a name that's coming up that's a big name that has a lot of marketability behind them and they get a finish over a legend like a Wonder Boy, sometimes they do jump the line. But in this case, the blessing in disguise for Belal was the fact that Shavkat's got an ankle injury and he's going to be out for a little while. And Leon, he didn't ask for an opponent, he asked for activity. So that makes for an immediate, or not immediate, but that makes for a quick turnaround for Edwards. So it makes sense to put him and Belal together. So I do think we're going to get the fight. I do think it'll be different than the first fight. I don't know who's going to win. I will say I'm leaning towards the 61% of our voters in my post that think Leon is going to win, but Belal could certainly come out after what we saw against Sean Brady and show us that he is the best welterweight.
Yeah, and Belal's had a chip on his shoulder for a while because it seemed like he was doing everything right and getting denied title shots. And I think even the writing was on the wall for him. If Shavkat Rakhmonov comes in there and beats a Wonder Boy, who's a great name, but he's over 40 and Shavkat's got a ton of hype on his name right now that he was going to skip the line. And I believe Shavkat's totally deserving of a title shot. But, I could see where somebody in Belal's position would be punching at the sky if that were to take place. So he kind of got lucky that there's an injury that Shavkat has to take care of right now. But I think Belal's sort of that guy that's just a slow grind, even in his fighting style and in his climb up the ranks, because he doesn't have all the glitz and glam and the flash of some of these guys, right? Ian Gary comes to mind. Like, if Ian Gary could get on another win streak, I could see him inserting himself in a serious title run very soon. But it would be unfair for him to jump over somebody like a Belal Muhammad. And I think Belal is just in the right spot at the right time right now, where he's got nobody with all these, with all the hype or the glitz and glam around them. And then Khamzat leaving the division, moving up to 185, gets out of the way, clears all the path for Belal. And I like Leon Edwards' mentality. Look, I'm not really the type to call people out, but that's not my job as the champ. My job is to defend my belt. I'm going to come in here, and anybody that tries to come take it from me is going to have to deal with the king himself. I think that's cool. Take all comers. Belal Muhammad's the rightful next top contender. And I think that's actually a really good fight. I thought it was going to be an interesting fight when we first saw it. And even though we only got a glimpse, it sort of felt to me like the Chito Vera versus Sugar Sean one. We're like, I'm pretty sure Sugar's winning this. But then again, he got himself taken out of it pretty early. For the Leon Edwards versus Belal one, I was like, I'm pretty sure Leon's going to win this thing. And it's going to be a tactical match for the entire duration of it. He's probably going to have to go the entire fight, leave it up to the judges. But I was like, I think Leon's going to get this thing done. Of course, the eye poke happens. You have to basically postpone it. There's just a whole lot more at stake now that there's a belt on the line.
Yeah, and it'll be nice to see them get in there and contend for a belt, because if there's two guys in the UFC who absolutely had to scrape and claw their way to a title shot,
right,
it was Leon and Belal. Leon now on a 12-fight win streak and Belal on a 9-fight win streak, and has yet to get that title opportunity. So it'll be good to see the UFC matchmakers put the guy that's the most deserving guy in there with the champ. And I think it's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, a little side note. It's so funny to think about the day where not too long ago, Leon Edwards was removed from the rankings.
That's right.
At 170. And now he's the world champ, taking on all comers. I think Belal's next.
Yep, me too.